you are. Welcome to this seminar. My name is Mayra Ruiz Castro, and I'm Director of Borderlines and Senior Lecturer at Queen Mary University of London. This is the third seminar of our Global Dialogue series. And this series is an annual program that we are running and to bring together researchers, activists, artists, and students to engage critically and creatively with urgent social questions, and especially those questions that fall outside mainstream academic spaces. We decided to focus this year's Global Dialogue series on the topic of AI, voice, and decolonial knowledge. And this has been a wonderful collaborative initiative between Borderlines here at Queen Mary University and the Institute for Creative Futures at Loughborough University, London. Borderlines is an interdisciplinary research collective committed to social justice and alternative methodologies. We work across different departments within Queen Mary's School of Business and Management and other Queen Mary University faculties such as English and law. And we seek to collaborate with global partners, especially from the Global South. And we are particularly committed to supporting the development of doctoral students and early career researchers. As I said, this year we are collaborating with the Institute for Creative Futures. And they bring together research and teaching across design, communication, media, and the creative industries, exploring how creativity and technology can shape positive social and cultural change. And it has been a real pleasure working with them, represented here by Angela Dye, a senior lecturer in entrepreneurship at Loughborough University. And we are also very, very grateful to the support and commitment and energy from almost 20 speakers, artists, and chairs who have contributed in different ways to this series. I would also like to thank Benti Fatima, our Borderlines coordinator, whose commitment and hard work has been crucial to make this series possible. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Angela. Are you there, Angela? I cannot see you. Sorry.
Yes,
who is going to do a short grounding exercise before we get fully started. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayra, and a very warm welcome to everyone here. All of you who have decided to spend some time with us this afternoon, friends and new faces, so happy to have you. Thank you so much to our speakers. I'm really excited for what we've got in store for you. As we are working in a mode of trying to understand the impacts of colonization on our psyche, on our educational practices, on our bodies. One of the things that we like to do is to take a moment and notice our bodies at the beginning of our sessions to get grounded, whatever that means for you. And that might look like just noticing how you're situated physically in your chair, with your feet on the floor. It might mean taking a second or a few seconds to tune into your breath, to think about, your eyes on the screen and maybe how much screen time you've had and whether you might need a little break away from the screen, whether you might want to take a look out the window and just notice what your body's asking for. We encourage you and invite you to do that throughout the course of our time together. We're here for 90 minutes, but you are not only a mind, you are also a body. So yeah, we just invite you to tune into what your body might need over the course of this time together, and just to slow down and respond to it, respond to the signals that it might be giving you. And we'll start off by just taking a quiet moment to listen to our breath, if that feels good for you, and just tune in. And take that time to arrive here. Whatever you were doing before can now be set aside just momentarily as we share this relational field and this space together. Thank you so much. So it's my great pleasure to get to introduce this next individual and performance, video performance. Bionic and the Wires is a group represented here by John Ross that use bionic arms to enable mushrooms and plants to create music and visual art. Their work explores the intelligence and responsiveness of the natural world by transforming bioelectrical signals into artistic expressions. And I came across them, as many people do these days, on social media. And in thinking about curating artistic offerings for this seminar series, when I encountered this magical and technically advanced and exciting video of some humans that had been working to build contraptions that allow mushrooms to play music, I said there could be nothing more fitting for our Decolonial AI seminar series that really hopes to build a bridge between the ideas of technology and nature, that hopes to bring the natural and the material and the cultural worlds into conversation, and to highlight how they really are interconnected, that the separability and the separateness that we have posited between them as a result of centuries of certain kinds of education, of colonial thinking and anthropocentric education has erased that ability to see that connectedness and interconnectedness. But this experimental music, I guess I could call it, and I hope, John, that you'll tell us how you think about it, really, I think, offers a special kind of intervention in that notion of separateness, really shows us how there is agency, there is voice and creativity in the natural world, that we just need to have the right attunement to understand. So Bionic and the Wires show us that intelligence, expression, and creativity can emerge in surprising ways. And that invites us to rethink our assumptions about authorship, about collaboration, and the possibilities of human and non-human creativity. So very excited to hear what happens next. First, I'll hand over to you, Myra, to play us the video, and then it will be over to you, John, after that. Thank you.
Oh, wow.
I'm sorry, Myra, you have to unmute yourself. Wow, I
Wow.
think we're all taken aback. So cool. The rhythm was incredible. Um, Over to you, John. Please tell us how this awesome project came to be and how you came to be involved with it, please. Thanks.
Great. I mean, I'll just load up a presentation, but yeah, the plan is to talk about, obviously people ask, how did you get into this? What is this? Why are you doing it? How does it work? Obviously, as well, is something that people ask. So I'll try and answer some of those things in the next 10 minutes or so. Just let me do this. Okay, how am I doing?
Looks good.
Okay. Great stuff. So, yeah, as you said, I mean, we would see ourselves as bio artists. So we create art with living things. It's me and one other person that I work with, who's a musician. I'll talk about him in a minute. It's obviously we've had a lot of interest in what we're doing. I think it's quite a radical idea. Really, I think it's the first time that, certainly in the real world, that mushrooms and plants have been able to, you know, be artistic, which is quite a crazy idea. We've had a lot of interest from all over the world. We might have had about 5 million views on our social media, but maybe 50 million or so across the world. And that's only since, I think, September, October. So it's just been incredible how people are really, really interested in this idea. So yeah, we're based in Manchester in the UK. And yeah, we're really exploring, we're really actually inspired by the science around plant and mushroom intelligence, which is changing a lot, has done over the last 10 or 20 years. People are talking now even about plant and mushroom consciousness, but definitely intelligence and sentience. It's a fascinating area. So there's bits of research that have shown that, I just put in the chat that, plants can make sounds that can communicate with other plants or even other species like insects. Plants are capable of counting. Plants and mushrooms are capable of decision making, which is, comparable to the sorts of decision making that we would make as people as well. But the crazy thing is that they don't have brains. So no one really quite knows how they're capable of doing that. And what we're doing, I think, with the art that we're creating is we're just shining a light on them. And we are clearly, I'll talk about how it works in a minute. It's it's an illusion. We're showing something that, there is a connection between the plant, but we're not plugging into the brain of the plant or mushroom. We're just connecting to its bodies. So we are connecting up with the signals, the electrical signals that it makes, but it's not like we're connecting directly with it. We really know that it's moving its arms, but it looks like that. And I think Picasso once said that art is the lie that shows the truth. And that's kind of what's happening here, is that we're showing that truth that actually plants and mushrooms are really intelligent, in a sort of illusion type way. There's two of us, as I say. There's me. My background is not as an artist. I've done environmental work for a long time. I run an environmental organization, actually. And I am also not afraid of having a mess about with some technology. I've really just connected up lots of bits of technology to make this work. I had the idea about a year ago, sorry, probably 2 years ago, and I took over my spare room at home. That's the one I'm in now, actually. And I just disappeared for a couple of months, because as soon as I had the idea, I just couldn't get it out of my head, and I realized it was such an amazing thing to do, that I had to do it. And I ordered half of eBay, I think, tried to connect it all up, and eventually it worked in spring a couple of years ago. And then I worked with Andy, and he's been doing music for a long time. And one of the interesting things about what we do, I think, is that we're trying to do that collaboration between humans and mushrooms and making music. So some other artists, they just they connect up mushrooms or plants to synthesizers, but we're trying to include humans in that as well. It's incredibly difficult, because plants and mushrooms aren't very good musicians. So it's very, very hard for Andy to do that. And we end up playing quite improvised music, ambient music, kind of jazz influenced music, because it's very, very difficult to play anything that's kind of on a normal grid structure that you would hear musically. I've talked through a bit of this already. Yeah, I mean, the first gigs that we did were in May 2024, and we first uploaded videos onto YouTube, and I suppose we just didn't know initially. People didn't seem very interested. And then we've had a couple of moments where we've definitely gone viral, and that's been strange, because I didn't realize that meant that you actually felt sick, rather than actually sort of exploding on the internet. It's such a crazy feeling to have all of those people messaging you, and so much interest alongside your normal life. But it's been amazing as well. We've had some incredible opportunities that people have put forward. We've just performed at the UN conference on biodiversity in Manchester, in front of every country in the world. And we've just been at Berlin Fashion Week doing a catwalk show with mushrooms and plants. So yeah, it's been quite a change for me. I had a fairly regular office job before all of this. The picture on the right, by the way, it always starts with Legos, doesn't it? I think I was just demonstrating that. That was the sort of early days as I was experimenting. Things look a little bit different these days. Yeah, of course, there's a lot, and through the introduction, you kind of did a better job than I would really at this. There's quite a lot that we're exploring here with this, if you want to get deep with it. And I don't think you necessarily need to, actually. A lot of people find what we do hilarious, and that's great. I love that emotion. That's really lovely that people enjoy that. I think fun is underrated, but you can also get quite deep with it as well. I think that idea that mushrooms and plants can create their own art is a fascinating idea, and we're working with some dancers at the moment. We've done music. I realized that I've sort of almost opened Pandora's box with this. So I've got on the right hand side here a mushroom which is painting. So I started doing mushroom painting. So I've had a lot of fun experimenting with different art forms that I can work on. And we, as I say, are highlighting that intelligence of plants and fungi, hopefully. And all of these comments that we get on social media and these emails that we get, you know, and this seminar series as well, you know, it really does show that people are fascinated in that area as well, particularly fungi. These days they're quite fashionable, and people, I think because they look a bit like a brain, are really interested in it at the moment. So that's great to be part of that. We work with some brilliant scientists now. There's a research institute called SPUN, which is based in Amsterdam, which is you know, they work alongside us and help us with some of the amazing videos they've got of mycelium growing, for example, that we can use in some of our performances. And we you know, hopefully help in terms of public engagement, like that organization I just talked about, SPUN. You know, I think what hopefully we're doing is you know, the sort of average person who isn't realistically going to engage in plant science, which is always a bit niche. Plants don't move, they're often overlooked. Obviously, when you get into them, they're very interesting, but I think it's probably fair to say that most people don't think about them that much. But as soon as they start playing an instrument, making music, then people, you know, their ears prick up and they start getting interested in them, which is wonderful. You know, obviously we have that connection through to sustainability as well. I think if we can start to appreciate plants and fungi and you know, the natural world in general, then that's hopefully going to help people care about it. And we are also, you know, obviously, hopefully helping people think about plant consciousness as well. We're not reading the thoughts of the plant, but we are listening to their electrical bioelectrical signals to make the music. So how it works, everyone always asks me that. So plants and fungi, you know, they react to their environmental conditions. Plants have action potential, so they have these changes in electricity within their bodies, just like we do actually through our nervous system. And what we do is we connect up some of these clips. You can see them on this image here on the right. And we measure the voltage between the two sets of clips. And that is, you know, very generally representative of the internal processes of the plant or the mushroom. That we then use that, convert that into what's called MIDI, which is a music language, using something called the MIDI sprout, which is somebody else's technology. And then we take that and we put that into the real world through some other bits of kit, so that we end up with you know, these motorized arms moving, which you saw in the video. We do things like, if there's a big fluctuation in electricity, we play one of the arms, like the arm on the left hand side, and then if there's a small, we play the arm in the right hand side. So there's some sort of mapping process which has some logic to it, but in general it is quite a crazy system that clearly we have developed for this. And yeah, as I've touched on, we've tried all sorts of different wacky things. So you know, really interested in trying different instruments. So we've had a mushroom, we've had a mushroom DJ, we've had plants playing keyboard, guitar, handpan. We obviously different types of synthesizers. We've played. We've actually had a mushroom vocalist we've developed. There's a research that's shown that mushrooms have 50 different patterns of electrical signal, and so we've mapped those to 50 different words. And so we've had to think about what 50 different words mushrooms might say, and then create samples of those for mushrooms to play, which was a lot of fun for a couple of hours. We've watched the video already, so I'll sort of skip over that. And I think the last thing from me, and feel free to ask me some questions at the end. You know, clearly there's a lot of research and development around this, because it's such a new area. Just making it work is very difficult, but as soon as we start adding new instruments or new processes in, then there's a lot of work that we need to do in that. The latest, I think, is probably we're connecting up projections as well, so I'm spending quite a lot of time so that the organism can actually control video as well as the actually creating the music. We've got music and performances. I think you're all miles away, but we've got quite a few in Manchester, so if you check out our website, you're very welcome to come and see us perform. We've got some amazing offers to do art exhibitions as well. We're doing a few of those. Again, it'll be on the website soon, and then doing this public engagement work as well. So yeah, I think that is my brief introduction to us.
That was wonderful, John. Thank you so much. It's truly unique. As I was watching the video, at some point, the little tools stopped being tools, and I swear that I was seeing sort of insects. So these little things became claws, and the little parts of the tools became eyes. Very interesting. Like I was transported into a very different setting. It all became nature, so to say, right? So that was genuinely amazing. So please, I'm going to encourage everyone to type your questions in the chat box, or any reaction you would like to share, any comment you would like to share. At the end of the session, we are going to address your questions. For now, and in the interest of time as well, I'm going to introduce today's chair. And this is our own Isadora Araujo Crutzen, who is a senior lecturer in business politics and development here at Queen Mary University of London. And she's also has always been a very supportive member of Borderlines. Her research work focuses on, I changed screens. Her focuses on the relationship between contemporary capitalist development and democratic politics. Her interdisciplinary research engages debates on state market relations, financialization, and business power, and forms of political mobilization, such as data activism. She's also interested in participatory forms of research and knowledge production, and focuses primarily on Latin America and Brazil. Isadora, thank you so much for agreeing to chair this session today, and I leave it now to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayra, and thank you to Angela and to Fatima as well for putting together this wonderful series alongside you. So we have an incredible lineup of speakers today to discuss the relationships between AI and collective memory, as well as possibilities for developing counter-narratives. So this seminar in particular will focus on the impact of AI on archives, oral histories, storytelling traditions across digital and non-digital worlds, with the aim of interrogating how AI is influencing stories, how stories are preserved, and which stories are erased. So we have Ana Santos, José Sherwood González, and Abdullah Safir. I'll introduce each of them, and they will present for about 10 minutes each, and then we'll have a larger Q&A with everyone. As Mayra said, you're also welcome to place your questions in the chat, and we'll try to bring them up for discussion as we move into the wider conversation. So first, let me introduce Ana Santos. So Ana is an independent journalist who reports on the intersections of gender and sexuality, sexual and reproductive health, and reproductive rights as well, and labor migration. She has written extensively about the gendered experiences of the Filipino diaspora in Europe and the Middle East. She was the Pulitzer Center's 2014 Persephone Meal Fellow. Her series called Who Takes Care of Nanny's Children illuminates the emotional anguish of Filipino migrant mothers who leave their children behind to work abroad as nannies and domestic workers. Her work has been published in a variety of outlets, including The Washington Post, The New York Times, Foreign Policy, The Atlantic, Vox, The Guardian, amongst others. She's a postgraduate degree. She has a postgraduate degree in gender sexuality from London, from the London School of Economics, and a political science degree as a Chevening scholar. She divides her time between Berlin, Germany, and Manila in the Philippines.
No.
Our second speaker will be José Sherwood González. He's a British-Mexican artist, researcher, and visual anthropologist whose work spans comics, film, sound, drawing, AI, and augmented reality. José recently completed a PhD in media at Manchester Metropolitan University, which was funded by AHRC/NWCDTP. His thesis developed the concept of ritual return as a practice-based methodology for rematriation and digital restitution. Working with Mesoamerican collaborators across Mexico and the UK, the thesis explored how heritage, memory, and institutional archives can be engaged through intercultural, community-centered approaches. He's currently Special Collections Teaching and Learning Coordinator at the Joan Rylands Library at the University of Manchester, and he's also visual and sound editor at Otherwise magazine. And then finally, we'll have Abdullah Safir, who will join us in a little bit. Safir is an ethics and critical design researcher interested in developing responsible, inclusive AI systems that respond to the majority world or global south contexts. He's currently working towards his PhD in interdisciplinary AI design at the University of Cambridge. He's a member of the Cambridge Collective Intelligence and Design Group, which is led by Dr. Ramit Debnath, and the Critical Design Studio Computer Lab, which is led by Professor Alan Blackwell. Safir also serves as an early career community member at the Center for Human Inspired AI and contributes to an AI at CAM project around ethically rooted AI for public value. Safir's PhD research is generously funded by the Gates Cambridge Trust. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Anna to start with her presentation. Anna, you have about 10 minutes. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I'd just like to do a check. Can you see my screen yet? Before I go into...
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet. Okay. So... we wait with bated breath. I'm going to be talking about the space between erasure and repetition and how AI magnifies those two with the discomfort and the inequality that all comes with. Okay, now you should see it as present screen. Yes?
We now see it, and it is now presenting. Perfect.
Wonderful. So since I am a storyteller, I'm going to start off with a story, but first I'm going to take you through what I would like to discuss today. I'm going through a timeline. I'm a journalist. I love timelines. So we're going to go through 3 periods: the BA period, or before AI, and the period of uneven archives, and then the current period of onslaught of AI slop, and where we might find ourselves in the future of erasure and repetition, the cycle of flattening and amplification, if we don't change the way that things are happening now. And then I would like to invite us all into a discussion of how do we build counter narratives then. I'm not going to leave this as a, I hope not a, gloomy scene, a realistic but optimistic and always fighting for better things kind of vibe is what I'm going for this afternoon. Okay, please at any time if you have a question, you can put that in the chat. As I said, I wanted to start off first with a story. When I talk about archives, let me tell you about my first experience with how archives are institutionalized memorials, but also ways of standardizing invisibility. I was studying at the London School of Economics. I was getting my graduate degree, and I wrote my dissertation on the exploration of Filipino female midlife sexuality. So yes, very specific. Now, I had one problem. I couldn't find literature on the topic on female Filipino midlife sexuality. And it's easy to think that, oh, it hasn't been written yet. How arrogant of me. But I knew that this literature, this study existed. I knew for a fact because I knew some of the academic scholars in my work as a journalist who had written about the subject. I knew it existed. And also, I would see some of the writings in my readings in LSE, but where would I see them? As a footnote. And then the problem was I couldn't find these archives in the LSE library. It wasn't archived there yet, or it simply was not digital yet. So as any self-respecting journalist would do, I rounded up a small army of sources. These were my friends, my contacts at the UP, or the University of the Philippines Center for Women and Gender Studies. And I said, hey girl, I mean, where are we? I know these studies exist. Can you give them to me? What have you got? And so this blessed their hearts. These women and gender diverse people came together. They photocopied slides, they photocopied journals, they photocopied pages of chapters of books, and they scanned it into PDFs and then emailed it to me so I would have references for my dissertation. This, for me, is the first example and experience of how uneven archives are places of remembering, but also they're places of where things are just. So if that's the case, I'm going to take you to from uneven archives to what does that mean for certain groups of people whose lived experiences, whose histories have either not been recorded or were erased purposely, intentionally. We're looking at migrant lives whose records are usually fragmented, some for protection because maybe they're undocumented, or other they fear prosecution. Queer histories are often hidden or coded, you know, in language that is specific to communities. Gendered resistance, the resistance led by women, for example, they're erased or omitted or written in a certain way that just focuses on their victimhood. And then specifically also, when it comes to women, we're seeing in the age of AI, and I'll go into this later in the later slides, how shame can be manufactured and then spammed. So we see that archives being uneven, it's not accidental. It's not because, like in my case, it's not because, oh, nobody wrote about Filipino female midlife sexuality yet. No, it's not accidental. Sometimes it's political, often it's economic. My university at the time just didn't have the resources to digitalize what was already written. But essentially, uneven archives, they are a mirror of current uneven power structures. And if we go in, now that we're going into the AI age, we're going to see that AI did not create this problem, but it did inherit it. And if we don't do anything, we just take this as it comes, we don't question it, then we risk amplifying it, amplifying these problems, these uneven power structures. Okay, I'm going to take you now to from before AI to current day AI slop. Have you noticed how your feed just looks all the same? People look all the same. They're saying the same thing. I've seen different people posting things, saying the same script, and I'm like, what is happening? This is now the age of AI slop, where the demand for speed has brought up, you know, this mass-produced videos and pictures that are aimed at virality. That's the general definition of AI slop. And what's interesting is the common themes for AI slop are religion, military, and I quote the BBC report, poor children doing heartwarming things. So the demand for mass production and the availability and ease of producing it bring us to this risk of mass repetition. when I was writing my notes, I was like, is that even correct? Math and repetition. That sounds like it's redundant. And that sounds like I would get a rap on my wrist from my grammar school teacher. But I think that's the best way to explain just how quick and mass produced and spamming on an exponential level we have in this age of AI. And also the popularity of images showing poor children doing heartwarming things. What does this tell us? The virality, the speed, the mass production, plus the topics that tend to go viral. We have what we're facing is a flattening of lived experiences into tropes, into stereotypes that again have a history of hegemony, have a history of uneven power structures. And this I added just today, this last point, we also have the amplifying of misogyny through a new kind of digital violence. I'm going to take you to the case that is currently unfolding. This is like I was telling Angela, this is like hot off the press. Right now in Germany, what is being talked about and people are angry, people are out on the streets, is the case of Colleen Fernandez. Colleen Fernandez is here. She is a former presenter, news presenter at my network, Deutsche Welle. And she's a public personality. For years, Miss Fernandez, had been battling digital violence. There were pictures of her that were sexually explicit that were going around the internet and in chat rooms. Now, she even did a documentary about it to try and surface, the dangers that women face in the age of digital violence and sexually explicit material. And now what is unfolding is the person behind all of those images were her ex-husband. For years, she recounts that at least a decade, he had been producing fake profiles of her, fake images of her, and then engaging with other men into sexually explicit conversations. So he not only replicated images of her, but also fake, falsely personified her. And what is interesting about this unfolding story with Ms. Fernandez is saying is because it was over a decade, right? In the early days, it was quote unquote easy. Please take that with a huge grain of salt to decipher which images were fake and manufactured. And now it's gotten really much more difficult to tell if sexually explicit photos are deep fake porn or actually ones that have been consensually produced by the person. Now the discussion here is this has also surfaced the lack of laws in Europe and in Germany protecting women against digital violence. Ms. Fernandez has filed her case in Spain because in Germany, it was found out that there are not enough laws regarding digital violence to actually prosecute the accused for this crime of digital violence. Okay, so where are we? We've talked about uneven archives. We've talked about how these mirror uneven power structures, and we've also talked about how certain groups, and specifically in the case of Ms. Hernandez, the women are most vulnerable, especially when it comes to the amplification and mass production of sexually explicit, non-consensual images. How can we counter all of this? Sure, we can talk about expanding accessibility and how, AI does have this power of making information more accessible. It can democratize archives. And because people can participate more in knowledge production, we can decolonize knowledge. We have to acknowledge that can exist also with these inherent dangers that we've already talked about. And that is my last point about defining the parameters of prevention and accountability. One side is always going to be accountability. Whoever is behind non-consensual, sexually explicit photos and images will have to be held to account. But even before we get to that point, we have to think about how do we prevent these images from being produced or even being spread. It's a very difficult conversation to have. but it is a conversation that must be had. And at the same time, in parallel with the good that AI could bring, it also needs to go hand in hand with this, with the bad stuff. Okay. And my alarm went off, so I just have last minute. I have been asked, like, what about AI in the newsroom and what we do with AI as a journalist? Are you afraid that it will take over your job? Yes, of course. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge that newsrooms are using AI more and more. For example, in automating routine tasks like transcribing interviews, and my favorite, translating things that are in German and I don't speak German in English. In massive investigations that include massive data sets, you see newsrooms working with data analysts and technicians to create chatbots that can act as a research assistant and data analyst, and then also for optimizing audience reach through CEO, writing of headlines, or prompts for comments. But always, when there's an AI component, there comes a rigorous verification and human element in all of these steps in the newsroom. So lastly, I would just end by saying, in the age of AI, we're looking at the liberalization of digital spaces, but also a reclaiming of analog spaces to counter that, right? To counter these two truths. But we always have to be conscious of how AI is a mirror of current inequalities. So it always has to come through a critical lens of decolonization, and also through the aspect of gender, right? Specifically because of cases that I talked about where we see queer people, gender diverse people, and women being at a disproportionately disadvantage when it comes to AI and how it can be used against them. That ends my presentation. My last slide here, I have all of the sources in case you would like to read more about those cases that I've discussed in these slides. I will make them available to Angela and the rest of the university team. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna, for such a interesting and compelling presentation. So now we will turn it over to Jose. Jose, I believe you're muted.
Thank you. I did this in the test call as well. So thank you so much, Anna. That was absolutely fascinating. And I'm excited to see how this maps together and comes together because, So this is, so I'm going to talk a little bit about my PhD research, and I'm going to kind of talk about the next steps of where that's going to go. I literally had my Viva in December, but the name of this talk is Remedying Knowledge in the Age of AI, thank you, and archives, voices, and pluriversal storytelling from or with the Amoshli Tezcatlipoca, the Book of the Smoking Mirror, or Codex Visuarum, lots of ors, maybe too many. The Amoshli Tezcatlipoca is a pre-Hispanic manuscript, a Mesoamerican manuscript, and I put this date there of 1200 to 1521 because we don't really know when it was made, who made it really, or whereabouts it was produced. We do know that it's from central Mexico around the Puebla region. But the history has typically focused on the fact that it's been held at the World Museum Liverpool since 1867, and before that it emerges in Hungary randomly for perhaps obvious reasons. And so this is one of only 16 surviving Mesoamerican manuscripts in the world, the majority of which are outside of Mexico. Yes, and so how do I move along? All right. So I thought I would just show you what this looks like in action, because so this is a 3D model that I produced because I was very concerned about that. I didn't understand how it worked. That you get to see all these different images separately, but to actually see it together, you get more of an understanding of what it is and what it was used for. So this is a book of days, and it would be used by a tonalpuque or a timekeeper to depending on who would come to them, maybe in a market setting, to say, I'm planning on doing this journey, when is a good day to do this? And essentially there is everyone has their own day, based on 20 days in day signs. And so depending on what day you were born or the day you conceived, I've never truly got my head around that. Sorry, it speeds up really fast around here. It's all on Sketchfab, and I can share the link after I talk. But just so you get an idea of what this is, and kind of and yes, that it's made out of deer skin. I'm painted on plaster, and it's a beautiful, really beautiful object belonging ancestor. So my PhD was titled "Ritual Return: Rematriating the Book of the Smoking Mirror," and the kind of the four contributions to knowledge, I guess, that was put forward is that we were able to rename the from Codex Visuarii Maya, so moving away from the European collectors from the 19th century. This was the name that was given to it, and then moving towards a name that means the Book of the Smoking Mirror, which was I was able to talk with lots of different collaborators from around the area, from which it's believed to come this complexity or difficulty of actually being able to fully grasp, who is the community when it comes to repatriation, which is always an important idea. And so this, from the collaborative research that I was doing during my field work in Puebla, I was speaking with ritual practitioners, danza groups, tlacuilos, so these are painter scribes, so contemporary people that are, as in people that are living today, that are working with these objects and with this this cultural heritage. And so they can be indigenous, but not necessarily always. And so there's a lot of mixed race, mestizo people, myself included. Mestizo meaning half of mixed race or mixed people. So where there's this kind of blending of ideas and cultures, this kind of syncretism that goes on. And so my idea really, and I don't want to talk too much about my PhD, but really I wanted to be able to bring all of these people together in concert so that we could, rather than just focusing on archaeologists or anthropologists or art historians, that we were able to have a more open idea of seeing how research can be used as an offering. Research as tlalmanali, to use a Nahuatl term. The idea that I wanted to be able for this research to connect and fascinating. Mestizo is also in Filipino. Using different facsimiles, using different objects that I produced over the course of the research and sharing them in different ceremonies and rituals. I developed this idea of the 4 R's of ritual return, which focuses on restitution, ritual engagement, relational epistemics, and responsive praxis. And so this idea really that return is not an act, it's a relation, it's an act of relationality, I guess. This is one of the facsimiles in Tehuacan el Viejo, which is where it has been believed, the hypothesis is that it was produced in this area, that there was a school. Now it's a load of beautiful rocks, but a great site. And so, yeah, I'm at this point, and it's a bit strange to be reflecting so soon after my PhD, but to come back, I've been thinking about, so if you have this this unease or this difficulty when it comes to physical repatriation, it's a slow political process, and digital access can reproduce institutional control, and these hierarchies are there embedded. As Anna was saying, the idea of this uneven archives creating this mirror of uneven power structures, I think, is very much what I was observing when I was in the World Museum. So although the curators there for global cultures are very interested in doing this kind of work, it's just also the sheer amount that is collected in these kind of old ethnological archives then becomes quite easily neglected. And so I want to focus on these epistemic assets. So these are the images, the metadata, the catalogs, the narratives, everything that's produced that really tells us that story, that within intellectual property restitution. So this is ideas put forward by Andrea Wallace. The GLAM-E lab is that the indigenous people, or the people to which this belongs to, should have access and should own those epistemic assets. And so some of the questions that I'm now thinking about is, what would it take legally, technically, or ethically for communities to own their own archives? And can the tools of intellectual property be repurposed to govern knowledge with communities rather than over them? And then this kind of next ideas that I've been thinking about is what if AI could give the codex its own voice? So one of the things I was able to do during my PhD was to record all these different points of view about each specific page. And I guess I'm putting it forward more as a provocation, because is it even possible to do this? I'm not actually sure this is the question I want to answer, that's driving this, because if can you have an AI or a program, a platform that is co-authored, consent-driven, and community-governed, and what would that look like? So there would be three strands to this, and so there's the legal strand, which is considering the rights and the ownership, so comparative review of IP law in UK and Mexico, and doing this kind of more forensic audit of the assets at the World Museum Liverpool, as well as drafting IP licensing frameworks to restore authority to communities. Again, with this kind of parenthesis, or that it's difficult to say who it belongs to, and there's a lot of different actors when it comes into this. And then with the digital side, it'd be the development of the platform and the AI avatar. So thinking of the AI voiced Amoshli as being co-authored with the communities, and putting those the traditional knowledge labels and consent tags, if possible, as well as other forms of guardrails, in order to be able to produce this I guess to be able to try and limit what can be done. And so but the idea that I'm really led by Arturo Escobar's ideas, amongst other thinkers, decolonial thinkers, who speak about pluriversality, is that what would a form of pluriversal curation look like? So bringing these different voices together to be able to speak with each other without necessarily replicating that hierarchy, even though, based on what Hannah was talking about, and I agree that those hierarchies are there, that inequality is embedded within, how the archive is built historically. So that's a matter of then building new archives as well. And then there is also the other side of governance and policy, and thinking about how that would feed into future forms of thinking about stewardship, thinking about how and why Mesoamerican codices are in European collections in the first place. And so, yeah, obviously we have the issue that large language models are overwhelmingly trained on Western colonial archives. The indigenous oral histories, ritual knowledge, and community memory has been systematically underrepresented or absent, or not findable or invisibilized. And that this is an embedded form of, or it embeds epistemic hierarchies into its training data. And I guess the opportunity then is thinking about how AI can enable pluriversal storytelling. And if, I would be looking to explore things like co-authoring the prompts with different collaborators and the sort. So I'm aware that I've just gone over time, so I will just go very quickly through this. So this question of who gets credited and how would that look like is something that, if I wanted to really just put this to you to kind of say, well, this is do you have any advice, I guess, what to do, what not to do? Is this a terrible idea? Or is this something that is to be explored, that is worth exploring? I believe it is, but I think it's about thinking about how to use this codex as a case study to think about how to tell better stories, to be able to access this. So if the codex, or the Amoshli Tezcatlipoca, is a timekeeping device and is able to situate us in terms of our place and how we situate ourselves in time and space, then being able to ask it questions and for it to be able to talk to us through the different voices that built it together, to me seems like a really empowering and an interesting way of producing community-led AI and of different forms of storytelling. But also, I always think about the Jurassic Park of Jeff Goldblum, that, you know, no one ever thought about why it was built in the first place, to paraphrase him terribly. Anyway, I'll leave it there, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jose. That was really fascinating. Beautiful work with the 3D and incredible ideas also for questions that we need to be asking. We'll now turn to our last speaker, Safir. Hopefully Safir has joined us. Wonderful.
Yes, I think my my slides are visible, right?
Yes, they are.
Okay. Cool. Thank you. So yes, thank you so much for this opportunity to present. And I think I will try to finish by 10 minutes if it's possible. I know it's a very short time, but I will try to do my best. So yes, I am a PhD student at the University of Cambridge, and my works are ongoing. But because of the time limit, I decided not to talk about whole of my research, but some specific projects that actually related, I think, in today's discussion. So basically, my one of my key aspects of my PhD research is like how can we explore or understand non-Western ways of knowing through AI art, and imaginations and collectivities are the one of a few of the themes that actually have been recurrent in my research. So a little bit of background might help, because I have actually engaged from a very early stage of my career is to engage with ethnographically with marginalized populations group in Bangladesh. We wanted to understand that how computing systems was basically built on like global north-centric logics, and then how when we apply those technologies in socio-technical context of global south, it might actually create some disrupts, or like what kind sort of challenges that it creates. And this was one of my early level of research. And then with the rise of AI, and I think it was very much I naturally progressed that how we actually understand AI from global south perspective. So my broad research interest basically to decolonizing this AI imaginaries, ethics, and praxis. And also applying from this. This is basically was my focus on my MPhil that I did in at Cambridge, and then I actually progressed to my PhD, where I am actually focusing on like design justice angle for the majority world. And at the same time, I also do some try to generate some policy recommendation out of my research. And I'm very much fascinated with other two presentations, and actually already mentioned Escobar's Escobar's theories, fascinating theories. I also draw regularly from Escobar's work, and basically this subalternity, the marginalized or the lower social class of post-colonial societies, the people, these are like one of my key stakeholders of my research when I try to understand AI art. So next, basically the project that I wanted to highlight is basically an exhibition and also a digital archive that actually resulted from my research with a decolonial artist in Bangladesh whose name is SM Sultan, and he's actually we celebrate. He's not anymore here, obviously, but we celebrated his 100 years of birth this year. I mean, like last year, and my experiment was very interesting because I tried to regenerate or reproduce some of his artworks through systematic prompting and then see what happens. So I renamed this project as Sultan after AI, and see the results. So my I would be a little bit background about Sultan's artworks is basically why I chose them is because they actually represented those subaltern imagination that I was talking about. Like actually, this is the real rural Bangladesh, and these groups are actually systematically excluded from positions of power and influence, particularly within a post-colonial society, as I was also talking about. So you can see farmers, you can see women within their natural settings, like in a kitchen. You can see myths and narratives like first plantation. You can see also natural and human nature relationship like after the flood. These were like the four key artworks that I tried to reproduce with AI. So I will not go into detail because I'm in a minute I will be sharing the archive with you. But I think a little bit background about the prompt engineering work. I drew from like art history, literature, where actually we focus on the key elements and composition and context. At the same time, also focus on aesthetic and style. And then we apply this prompt engineering stuff, which is actually adding detail in every step and gradually like to increase the information within the prompt. And prompt 8, you can see that we translated that in Bangla to try to see what happens, and also actually uploaded the original image into the AI and then regenerate the prompt and repurpose it for our work. So I would like to welcome you to actually scan this QR code to get into the archive and to look at the prompts and outputs and find out the critical distances. I'm giving 30 seconds for that, and then I'll definitely discuss about this as you go through. It's basically an archive that you can actually say, for example, I can scan with my smartphone, and it will take you to the archive, Sultan after AI. So if you go there, you can find all the details and the series of prompts and the outputs. And I'll definitely share if somebody is able to do so. Can you please put this on the chat from the if you are able to access the archive. And also there is a paper out of it, and you can also read when it's done. But let me discuss some of the things that we found, which is very interesting. So, for example, this was a image about some farmers. Was like it's a colonial period. Was actually fighting with like a colonial rulers. And when we give a very detailed prompt, see that it is actually come up with a not anything related to Bengali or Bangladeshi stuff. It's basically come up with the Roman imaginations of fighting with like with the Roman cultural elements. And basically, and the second one is basically more interesting is see Sultan's artworks, see the women was a bit healthy, and it is actually challenging the patriarchal narratives that women are not the way we the patriarchal society frames them. But see, even after giving the very detailed prompt, it come up with a very weird photo, I would say. So they were not. It's definitely not women or like Sultan's women at all. Even after with all the details, and you can also imagine that boti, which is a long curved blade, and you have to use your foot. But ChatGPT was not understanding boti. They were coming up with a knife, and that makes changing the whole images. You can see all the images in the archive, obviously. And that is the third one is also very interesting. If you remember the photo with the flood, there was like a lot of men and women and also kids in the field after a horrible flood. And I tried to regenerate the images, but ChatGPT or DALI was telling me that it can't generate it because it carried the word dead. So dead people is a bad thing, and they can't they don't want to generate it. So it is some ethical implications of like how it's designed. But you can imagine that ethics is not universal. It could be for some communities, death could be part of their lives. That could be a natural thing for them. So with these artworks, I went for an exhibition at Cardiff, Wales. There is a conference on British human computer interaction researchers, and actually my approach was to use this as a provocative artifact and take their understandings and their perspectives, how to think about it, and also like about talking to the artist group in Bangladesh with through participatory engagements, that what questions come to your mind about inclusive design features in AI. So it's very interesting that when I worked with I engaged with the technical or like the HCI researcher, they talked to me about like technical fixes, but when I worked with the artists, they actually shared their concern about their imagination, creativity, and identity, that sort of stuff. So there is a huge difference between the standpoints, and there is another paper that I'm working on is basically to understand the differences between these design standpoints. I would like to briefly highlight another field of research, which we did in Bangladesh with marginalized group of artists. So these artworks, basically the rickshaw artworks and the street painters and some of the henna artists, these are not artworks that is well researched or like well highlighted in Western art literature. And then again in AI, it's like nobody thinks about them. So we did a 9 months of long ethnographic engagement with these artist communities and try to understand their perspectives. So we found out fascinating stuff from this, which I called ethics from below. So for example, currently a lot of a lot of conversations are going on about the copyright issues in AI art. So basically all of them are like Western neoliberal centric. I mean, like they want to compensate individual artists. But what we found is like this group of artists basically is very normal for them to own their artworks collectively. So what we theorized is basically collective agency that actually could help like collective bargaining mechanisms or like community-centric data stewardships and their artist solidarity to reclaim artists' right, artist control over text-to-image AI tools. And last thing that I wanted to finish with is a kind of like compilation of all this research. We did an AI artathon, which is like one of its type in a global South context in Bangladesh. We run this national level event with lots of like partners. But it might sound like counterintuitive that we are saying that these AI tools are not working. But I think it is more interesting if you see that it's a broken machine. But what do people do with this broken machine? We wanted to see that, and you can see that it is possible that with these limitations of these tools, say for example, these are not very much culturally representative, but people were able to draw from their imaginations and kind of like repair mechanism, what we say, coming from their memory and their storytelling capacity. They were trying to best out use of these tools in a very creative way. And I think that gives us that's some sort of like in between perspectives, is in between pessimism and optimistic perspective, that gives us some sort of idea that it might be possible to locate a new imaginary of AI in the global South, where we actually focus on not focusing on the technical stuff of AI, but on the human condition that actually enables to the appropriate use of AI. I'm finishing at this. You can also scan this QR code. It will take you to the AI hackathon website, which is also good. But I'm going to stop here. Hopefully, I can answer all the questions, and I'm happy to if you sketch find some of the papers because they're already some of them are already available online. Thank you so much.
Many thanks, Safir. That was also really fascinating, really wonderful project. So now I would like to open the conversation. I know several questions have already been put into the chat. I wonder if any of the participants that have posted questions on the chat would like to unmute themselves and ask the questions to the speakers. If not, I can start perhaps. I think this discussion that has emerged on the chat is quite interesting on around, I think across the presentations, there was a sense of, yes, there are, challenges and biases and harms that we need to contend with when we're talking about AI, but there was also a sense of optimism in how AI technologies might be used to preserve collective memory, or to kind of recover different kinds of forms of artistic expression and so on. So I actually wanted to hear the speakers a bit more on this point, in light of some of the comments that have been shared on the chat from Iman and Louise, asking about, how do we contend with the fact that some of these technologies remain nested in infrastructures that are controlled by powerful corporations? How do we contend with their environmental impacts and so on? So I would love to hear your thoughts on those.
I'm happy to speak a little bit to it. So, yeah, I mean, it is a huge concern, isn't it? I mean, when we're thinking about where this information goes and who owns it, and there's this kind of feeling of decentralization, but also a perceived lack of agency of where it goes if you're working within these larger within these American companies, and where this data goes and all of that. But I guess the thing that also to bear in mind is that these objects have historically been kept in places that are colonial in nature as well, right? Like, I guess there's no differentiation between a more techno-feudal kind of form of ownership to also these objects that have been held in these colonial archives. And so it's something that I think that's why, yeah, I'm starting to question these things in terms of exploring it as an option, and then seeing, okay, where do we go from here? So it's something that I'm still very much ears to the ground, trying to learn and see what there is to do, because I think an abolitionist approach of saying, okay, well, no AI or nothing, I mean, from what I understand, the amount of water that it takes to process prompts isn't anything in comparison to what it means to eat a burger, let's say, and I think it's not necessarily that I want to kind of rationalize or kind of make us have these comparisons, but it's just that, and it's not to say, okay, for that reason, then everything is okay, but it's just that, yeah, it's a complex situation and that we're in. Which I guess also speaks to kind of funding landscapes a little bit. If everyone's saying AI, and then we go towards that, then yeah, what are we doing? What are we doing here? Yeah.
Inevitably, when I'm in a panel or any kind of discussion about AI, it always ends with, what now? What are we gonna do now? and I would like to, I mean, I don't want us to be at this place of hopelessness. So with that question, I hope that it's a place of opportunity and inquiry and curiosity. For us as journalists, AI is not just a tool, but also it is the thing that we're also investigating. So it is a point of investigation, not just an aid in investigation. So there have been a number of investigations into these data centers and how they are depriving indigenous communities and colonized communities of basic necessities, water, for example, and how much they cost. And it is a new kind of like digital colonialization of sorts. And at the same time, then that goes back to how do we keep these discussions going when it comes to, and I'm speaking in my realm of influence as a journalist, how do we keep these investigations going? They take money, they take time, and again, we are losing our funding channels, our distribution channels, and the channels that used to keep our operations alive, to algorithms, to social media platforms. It's a very vicious cycle kind of thing. But I do see hope in how we have to keep on questioning big tech. Really, we have to keep on questioning big tech. I see a lot of resistance in people going to offline things, doing things offline as a point of counter, as a point of resistance. I see promotion of non-tech for profit models, whether it's for your newsletter, whether it's for your messaging encryption, whether it's with your communication. And that is going to be an emerging and developing conversation, but it's a conversation that we have to keep having And always with this mind frame, I think of what are we going to do now? How are we going to make this point? It's again another kind of industrial revolution, right? The industrial revolution of the printing press, the industrial revolution of the internet, the industrial revolution of AI. What are we going to do now so that we keep this within a framework that can be inclusive and that can still be ethical? We have to keep on challenging still these power structures beyond the colonial framework, but also big tech. Tall order, I know, but hey, we have to keep on doing it. Small steps to big things, right?
Yes, I agree. I agree with both of Jose and Nana. These are fascinating points. But we also have to understand that um, doing critique or like being able to do critique is also a point of privilege, because the marginalized groups that sometimes that we are working with, they know that they don't like these tools, but they were not able to like say that we don't like that, because some sort of our epistemic structure is like that, that these knowledges or these voices will be erased very easily. And this is important because when we talk about ethics, that might be also like very global north centric, and that's also not going to help with the communities. So we were to say, for example, we say very things like AI for good and AI for blah blah responsible AI, and like a lot of these discussions are very much focused on the global north. So what I see that one of the options that I also obviously we need to critique, or we need to challenge, but at the same time we need to refocus our discussions, that basically we need to go to the communities, ask for what do they expect from these tools, and then come up and design those our interventions through like with these insights. It should be coming from below, as I actually said, that even if these technologies are broken, there might be some aspirational affordances of these technologies. Maybe we don't know. So we need to learn from the communities that how do they imagine their usage, how they imagine their applications, and then actually tailor our policies or like interventions. So in terms of thinking that big models, maybe we could think about some small applications, and that might be create or like bring more value in terms of like real benefits from AI. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Do we have other questions? Would people like to raise? I know we have a couple questions for John that Angela has quite kindly put on the chat. John, I'm not sure if you want to come in on those as well, and perhaps relate to this conversation that we're having around how we engage with AI and kind of push it to work against the interests of corporations, I would say, and in the interests of the broader public and a diverse public at that.
Yeah, I mean, we in a lot of people that like what we do see that as the antidote to AI. I think that people are fed up with art and music being AI, led by AI. I mean, I think that there's a hell of a lot of it around, probably more than we realize, and people, and this is like hundreds of thousands of people or whatever that do these comments and speak to us through the internet, are really, they feel kinship with mushrooms and plants a lot more than artificial intelligence. And that they prefer to see a mushroom having a go. It's a bit like, I guess, watching a toddler start to play the piano for the first time. There's something a lot more magical about that than there is some machine that's just not thinking, nothing like us. So I think that's one thing. Interestingly, we've been invited to perform at the opening of the AI for Good conference in Geneva in July. I guess, as the kind of weird act before the dinner for the speaker's dinner. So I think Sam Altman's there actually for that. But we, you know, it's an AI and robotics conference. So I guess the robotics bit is what they're interested in. I studied AI weirdly in the 1990s when it wasn't anything at all. It was no use. There was no prospect of it being useful at all. But the last thing I'd say is just answering a couple of these questions very quickly. How's the realization about moons? Yeah, I mean, I was already a very nature type person, so I don't think it's massively changed my perspective of the natural world. I was already sort of sold on that. That's probably why I got into this. I've been doing environmental work for 20 years, you know. But I think it's very interesting how it's affecting other people because they are starting to look at plants and mushrooms in a new way. So that's brilliant. So that's probably the first answer. How's the process of foraging and foraging? Do you have specific forests or grow the mushrooms? Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate because I do run a mushroom farm as part of all this other work that I do. So I've got access to lots of mushrooms, which I can use for music. So I'm in the right sort of environment with everything else that I do to be able to do this. It is I love going out, and I mean, I do forage for mushrooms as well. People sometimes say, oh, what are the vegans going to eat now? You know, for example, you know, so it does start to make you think about, and weirdly, if you follow it through to that, I mean, plants, they develop fruit for us to eat, but they don't want to be eaten. You know, the plant part doesn't want to be eaten, does it really? So we're predating it. So just interesting ideas there, maybe for you to take away and think about. Please don't starve yourself to death, though. And yeah, I mean, clearly it relates to environmental issues. I think what's really amazing, I've been doing environmental work, engaging disadvantaged communities in Manchester predominantly for 20 years. That's what I do. I've engaged about 40,000 people, my organisation has, so the city, since we were founded. But we've engaged just through this art that we're doing, this Bionic and the Wires, you know, 50 million people in, you know, 4 months or something. So it's incredibly powerful. I know that they're just watching things for, you know, a few seconds, but hopefully that's changing the way they're thinking a little bit about how they care about the natural world. So I think it's incredible the power that there is there within art and music to do that. I've been slogging away for 20 years, and then now I've done, you know, 100 times more than I've ever done in my whole life in a few months. So that's incredible, you know.
Thank you, John. Actually, just to comment on the first part of your answer, I actually thought it was really fascinating the contrast between hearing the music that was being produced by the mushrooms or with the mushrooms in the video, which was quite unstructured, with the images that Safir had in one of his last slides that were AI generated, like through the participatory engagement, but AI generated. And all of them had the same perspective. Like none of them like looked at a kind of situation or a landscape in a different way. So I thought that was really fascinating to kind of think about like those kinds of contrasts and the way that even in perhaps trying to bring some pluralism into how we think about AI outputs, we might still have certain forms of standardization of what we, of the outputs and so on. Would anybody else like to join in and share any thoughts or questions? I think we have maybe a couple more minutes.
I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to go because just so I don't get sent out of the library.
That's all right.
But just to say thank you so much for everyone. It was fantastic. John, I'm aware of your work as well through So the City as well. So it's really cool. Yeah, fellow Mancunian. So, well, yeah, thank you very much for this, and speak soon. Please feel free to get in touch if there's any further questions. And thank you to the organisers. It's been great.
Thank you, Jose. Good luck.
So perhaps Maida and Angela, do I turn it back to you?
Sure, happy to close us out. Myra, was there anything that you wanted to add before we go?
I would just, well, first of all, thank all of our speakers. This has been a very engaging, creative, compassionate session, I think. And clearly we take a lot of food for thought. And just before we all disconnect, I would like to just make you aware of two upcoming events. One is, of course, our fourth and last seminar of the Global Dialogue series. We have asked in the three previous seminars whose knowledge, who speaks, whose voices and stories. And the final question we address is who resists. So please join us for the fourth and last seminar taking place on the 30th of June. And also, we would like to invite you to another seminar outside the series, but that is very closely related, and it has been organized by Isadora. And the seminar is entitled Data's Resistance, Feminist and Trans Interventions in Data and AI. We have a fantastic group of speakers for both events. So please, I just put on the chat box some links that you can visit to follow our events and also to register to our upcoming events. Thank you very much. Please, Angela, go ahead. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share this information. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Just remember to stay in touch with yourselves, stay in touch with each other, and look forward to our next conversation. Really appreciate it. Have a good evening, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Myra.
Yes, John, we can stay together. Let's just wait
Yes,
for
let's stay
people
together,
to
yeah.
disconnect. Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. See you hopefully at the next seminar.